Hey folks, and welcome to the latest installment of Dave's Impressions. This time around, Command Conquer Remastered. I played these games when they first came out in 1995 and 1996. Command Conquer was my first real-time strategy game, and made me fall in love with the genre. I've always sucked at them, but I love them nonetheless. These impressions were taken from playing the games for around 5 hours. I spent 2 hours with Command & Conquer, split between the GDI and Nod campaigns, and 3 hours with Red Alert, split between the Allied and Soviet campaigns. Enjoy! I knew I was going to enjoy the Command & Conquer Remaster when I first booted up the game and was greeted with the installation video from the original release. I laughed as the configuration of the sound card was considered obsolete. I love how the game starts in its original resolution and prompts the player to press space to play in its remastered form. Unfortunately, there is a noticeable stutter problem in the early levels. More prominent in Red Alert than Command & Conquer, massive frame drops. Sometimes restarting the mission will help, but not always. At the time of this video, the dev team are aware of the issue and I hope it will soon be fixed. It didn't make the game unplayable by any means, but it dampened my enjoyment. For those well versed in the RTS genre, Command & Conquer and Red Alert will seem simple. Basic even. There's not even a hotkey for attack move. If our units are fired upon while moving, we have to order them to attack the enemy. If the units are on their own or set on guard mode, they'll attack, but moving and firing are two distinct and separate actions. To end a mission, we need to obliterate the opposing force, including any single units that are hiding on the map. And since building up a huge army and steamrolling the opposition seems to be the dominant strategy, if we can even call it a strategy, in most of the levels I was winning through brute force and not due to making correct decisions as a player. I never got comfortable with what mix of units I should build and how many of each would create an effective army. In a way, I appreciate the puzzle levels where you only have a handful of units and have to make it through, because at least I know what I have to work with. Yes, I needed to restart these levels a few times until I knew what I was doing, but I had to restart many of the base building missions as well. This fear of not knowing what I'm doing is most exemplified with attacking an enemy base with an army not of adequate size. Not only do my units get stomped, but then the counterattack commences. As my army was just obliterated, my puny defenses are not enough to stand up to the barrage of tanks invading my base, and before I know it, it's restart time. The game is a trial by fire. I'll explain the strategies I learned as I played a little later, but first I want to talk about the full motion video and CGI cutscenes. Back in 1995 and 1996, these cutscenes lit my imagination on fire. It lent a gravitas to the mess of pixels I was controlling with my mouse. It gave structure. This was back when watching a new cutscene after completing a mission was its own reward. I have to say, these cutscenes did not hold the same sway over current Dave as they did over past Dave, but I found myself smiling while watching them. In Command & Conquer, a game dealing with a global terrorist organization, the cutscenes pull it back from taking itself too seriously. It's not camp, but it feels like the actors are winking at us. This is meant to be fun. This sense of fun would become overt in later games, but in Command & Conquer there's a playfulness to the mission briefings and the warfare interludes that feels subtextual. Red Alert is a different story. The intro of Red Alert is as effective now as it was when I first played it. The time travel to remove Adolf Hitler from history expressed through the line, "Hitler is out of the way." This means Red Alert is dealing in alternate history, a gigantic what-if scenario, and then the Hell March begins as we catch glimpses of all the visual goodies awaiting us during the campaigns as the music causes our adrenaline to surge. As iconic as I remember the soundtrack from Command & Conquer, it was playing Red Alert where my appreciation for the music soared. Command & Conquer isn't more of a science fiction game than Red Alert if you're looking at the types of units available in both games, but Tiberium and the Brotherhood of Nod lend a pulpier quality than Stalin trying to take over Europe. Red Alert feels more confident as a game. Like the developers made what they wanted with Command & Conquer, and took that knowledge to make something more grounded, yet more bombastic. Red Alert felt a little easier to play than Command & Conquer 2, but maybe that's because I realized building as many tanks as I could is a solid path to victory. Earlier, I talked about worrying about the optimal unit mix and how many of these units create the perfect army. It turns out, just spamming a metric truck fund of our strongest unit can be a solid strategy, as long as we have the resources to keep pumping them out. More than one refinery helps. We can replenish the army while our original is on its way to the enemy, in case they're too much for us. Of course, each side has their own quirks due to the change in units. In Red Alert, the Soviets are more power hungry, so we need to build more generators, and it's always a good idea to have adequate spacing between buildings so troops can easily move around the base if need be. I thought barriers would be a deterrent to the AI and allow my base to dictate where the enemy had to walk, so I could defend against these choke points, but tanks will drive over them like they're nothing. As each battle has been hard fought, the eventual victory should feel sweeter, but it feels not the case if I'm just winning through brute force. Maybe realizing this is a strategy in itself. So, what are my final thoughts on Command & Conquer Remastered? Well, if I was still making episodes of my Dave's Favorite Game series, I would have created episodes on Command & Conquer and its sequel Tiberian Sun. The connection to my first real-time strategy game, combined with a decent price point of the remaster, made this a day one purchase. Despite my frustrations, I was having fun up until the end. I don't know if I have the time to dedicate to completing these games, I never could when I was younger, but I'm glad I bought this remaster, as it's given me a new appreciation for both Command & Conquer and Red Alert, alongside my pleasant memories. Now, what are your thoughts on Command & Conquer Remastered? I'd love to hear them down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, why not buy me a coffee? There's a link in the description. If you'd like to help me out in other ways, please give the video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, I hope you're all having a wonderful day.